This episode is sponsored by Squarespace. Whether you need a domain, website, or online store, make your next move with Squarespace. For those of us who work in color, one of the hardest things to figure out is what should the colors in our photographs actually look like? In the days of film, that decision was largely made for us because when we went out there and we selected our film stock, say Kodak Gold or Kodachrome, that film stock decided how those colors were rendered. It was kind of baked in. But in our digital era, we're handed a pretty blank canvas because a raw file by design is very flat and neutral and waiting for our interpretation. And that's where things get complicated because once the decisions for the color in our image is left to us, we have to make a lot of choices. How warm or cool our image should be, how saturated it should be, how the individual colors in the photograph should be treated, how stylized should it be, and how far is too far. And the journey to defining a style for our photography, especially when it comes to the color in our shots and how we treat it, is often a long and messy one. I'll use myself as an example. When many of you probably found my photography online, it was in an era where I was shooting a lot of black and white work, very contrasty monochrome images which were featuring light and shadow in a creative way. What you might not know, and maybe be surprised to hear, is that decision was partly driven by fear, because on the one side I am mildly colorblind, which means I didn't have a lot of confidence with how I was treating the color in my shots. But also because early on in my photography journey, I had a habit of totally overcooking the edits in my photography, and I'd lost faith in myself to be able to process color tastefully. In fact, if I look back at my journey with color, I can see three pretty distinct phases. That first stage was over-processing because I discovered editing software and every slider felt like an opportunity to make my image more vibrant and interesting. And so I was writing saturation sliders and contrast sliders and heavily color grading my images because in my mind, if a little bit was good, then surely more was better. The colors were loud, the processing was really obvious, and if I look back, a lot of those images feel more like experiments than finished photographs. But I don't regret that stage. A lot of us look back on our creative mistakes with a bit of embarrassment, but I don't think we should, because experiment is how taste develops. And sometimes we have to far exceed good taste before we recognize it. Then came the opposite extreme, that second stage, which I call under-processing. Because when I took a look at my work and saw how garish it was, I reacted and I pulled everything back and I started to pursue more subtle edits, more neutral colors, and more faithful representations of the scenes in front of me. At the time, I would have convinced myself that this choice was based on some sort of integrity, but if I look back at it now and get really honest, it was mostly based in fear. Fear of getting it wrong, fear of looking very heavy-handed with my editing, and especially fear of being judged by other photographers. I reasoned that if I kept everything as neutral as possible, nobody could accuse me of over-manipulating my images. But the problem was that in trying to make sure that I wasn't making bad creative decisions, I gradually stopped making many creative decisions at all. And that's what led me to the third stage, and let's call it intentional processing. And ironically, this stage began with a preset. At the time, I was preparing to do a video on Kodachrome, which I actually never released. But what I did is I went out there and I tried to find a preset that closely resembled what Kodachrome did on film back in the day. And it's a notoriously hard thing to do, but I found a preset by the Classic Presets that I thought got pretty close. And when I applied that preset to some of my images, I noticed something immediately. I liked it, not all of it, not all the time, and every time I applied that preset, I needed to do a lot of tweaking, just like you need to do with any preset. But I realized that this preset had a much bolder approach to color than I had when I was just tweaking my own images for myself. And I realized something immediately, that when I was looking at these images, they no longer looked exactly like the scene looked, but often they felt more like what the scene felt like to me. And that was a breakthrough because I stopped asking myself whether a color grade that I was putting on an image was realistic and started asking myself whether that color grade was truthful. And those two aren't necessarily the same thing. Cameras are technical instruments, but we are emotional beings. And memory doesn't work like a camera. Experience doesn't work like a camera. And often our memory doesn't call up the exact realistic color of the light. It calls up the feeling of being there in the moment. Color in our photography isn't just about description. It's also about interpretation. And it's a key part of defining our visual voice. I recently had this fact driven home to me again when Joshua Jackson and I were putting together our latest book, The Art of Street Photography, because as we were choosing images to go in the book, when I put my images side by side with his, I realized immediately that his had a boldness and a consistency to them that gave them such a rich mood that maybe mine were lacking in a lot of places. Mine felt cautious and safe, as if I was still being driven by this fear that I might get that color processing wrong, instead of pushing myself to be more intentional and make sure that my style and the mood that I intended for those images came through in the shots. I actually asked Josh if he wouldn't mind going through my images, the ones that would be featured in the book, and giving them a grade so that there was a consistency through the book, which is obviously something you have to do so everything fits together as a piece. And when I looked what he did to my images, I realized I still have a lot more work to do to get out of that safe and neutral rut that I created for myself, to make sure that my images had a style and a tone and a look to them. So when I look back now, I can clearly see those 3 stages where I started in that over-processing phase, and then as a fearful response, I moved to kind of under-processing my images and having them be far more neutral. And now I hopefully am finding myself somewhere in between those two, where my color processing feels far more intentional. I'm no longer just pushing sliders around to try grab attention from my work, nor am I sitting back and trying to leave everything as neutral as possible out of fear. Now hopefully I'm finding that middle ground where I'm actually owning the fact that color should be an important part of the story I'm trying to tell in my images. Let me show you how that works in Lightroom. Okay, so I'm here in Lightroom Mobile on my phone, which is where I do 95% of my image edits these days, and I like to keep the edits to 30 seconds maybe. I feel like if I'm editing for a long time, I'm probably just trying to rescue a bad image. And this is just a super simple image that I took recently. It's just of sunlight coming in through a window, curtains either side. It was actually a Chinese restaurant in New York, and I just liked how quiet the scene was, a little bit of the reflection in the trees in the background. So let me show you kind of how I would try and push the colors now to give it a bit more style and not make it as neutral. You can see what it is as shot, and it looks a little flat. So if I go over here, first thing I like to do is go to light and just sort of set my exposure, and I like to use curves for my contrast, just because I feel it gives me a lot more control than actually trying to use the contrast slider. I'm going to bring the exposure up a touch, something like that, and then probably just the whites down to bring the curtain detail back there a little bit. And I've kind of got my exposure where I want it to be, and now I can go to work on the color. Obviously, because when you start pulling around curves, it's not only going to bring in contrast, it's also going to saturate your colors. So if I set that, I kind of know what I've got to work with. Next tab, if I come across to color, now I'm going to set my temperature, and I know immediately that I want to warm it up slightly. Remember, neutrally, this is what it was, right? The white balance was correct, and the sun was kind of coming and going, but I want it to feel like warmer evening light to me, because that's what this scene sort of feels like to me. So I'm going to warm up my white balance slightly, and I'm also going to look at the tint slider. Tint slider is often something that photographers kind of avoid because they're not really sure how to use it well. I'm going to go crazy with it. If I dial it to the left in the greens, you can see what it does, and right sort of with the magentas. I'm just going to pull it back a little bit into the greens, just a touch, because I feel like that slight green tint is often a feature of a lot of film stock, so it gives us that kind of slightly more filmic vibe. I'm going to pull up my saturation just a touch. That'll separate out my colors so I can start to play with them, and maybe just a touch more on the vibrance. Now if I come back up here to my color mixer, this is where I can affect each of the individual colors in the shot, and I've got videos that explain how to do this. So if I select each of these colors along the dots here, then I can play with each of those colors. I can dial the hue, which is to change it to one of the colors either side of that color on those with those dots. So at the moment it's selected to green. If I pull it to the left, it'll go to yellow, and if I pull it to the right, it will go to more towards kind of the cooler cyans. That's if any green appears in the image. You can see it clearer with the yellows. If I select yellow, if I dial it to the left, the yellows will go orange and red. If I go to the right, they will go more kind of green into cyans. So I'll double tap it to center it again. Saturation for that color, and then luminance for that color. So with this, what I probably want to do is pull those yellows a little bit into the oranges. So pull them left, saturate them a bit, and brighten them up just a touch. Then the other color that's jumping out to me here is the blue in the top left corner, which I feel like it's good that it's there, but it's a little distracting. So I'm going to select the blue. I'm going to lighten it a touch. You can see what that's doing there. Lighten it a touch and desaturate it just a little bit. And then there's also take my cyans, because we've got this sort of strip of kind of board, or that kind of little bit of sort of green on the wall there, that kind of vertical line, the horizontal line. If I take that cyan, let's just test if it's affecting it. Yes, if I go bright and dark, you can see it's just affecting that color there. I'm going to bring the luminance up to make it pop a little bit, and I'm going to bring the saturation up because I think it's a nice kind of foil to bounce against that orange and have that kind of tealy color in the background. So that looks pretty good to me. Now, if I hold my finger on it, that's what we come from, and that's what we're now at. A far richer, more saturated color mix, but also I play with those individual colors on their own to kind of bring them through as well. Now what we can do is go to our grading here. Now, grading is important for me to do at the last stage, right? Saturation first, and vibrance and white balance first. Second stage is to go into the color mixer and play with the individual colors and get them where I want. And now grading goes above that, right? It sits on top. It's going to affect everything like a filter over the top, right? So this is kind of finishing things up. So we've got our shadows, midtones, and highlights, and our global. I'm probably just going to play with the shadows and highlights and maybe just a little bit of the midtones. And I'll show you a useful feature with how to use this. So we could take our little center point here, we could drag it down, right? That would introduce cool tones into those shadows. We could push it up. That would produce like warmer tones in the shadows. What I probably want to do is actually pull some green into the shadows because again, that's something that feels quite filmic and we see quite a lot. These little wheels are often quite fiddly. So what you can do is go to this little arrow at the bottom right corner and click it. And then we've got a drop down if we scroll up where we can actually affect things with a little more accuracy. So we've got that green selected. We've now got saturation. So probably bring it up to 29-ish, something like that. Luminance will bring our shadows up and down. I probably want to bring them down a little bit just to create that contrast. But that's given us kind of those greener shadows. This is something I never would have done 2 years ago because I would have felt like it was too artificial or something. But film does this, so why can't we, right? If I head across to my next one, this is my midtones. And I probably want to bring in a little bit of warmth, something like that. Maybe it's kind of a yellowy orange. Saturation, let's bring it up a touch. Luminance, yeah, let's bring our luminance up. It'll give it a little bit more pop. That looks pretty good to me. And then let's slide across here to our highlights. And again, we'll just bring a little bit of warmth to highlights. Probably something a little more orangey maybe this time. So we've got greens through to, in the shadows, through to kind of yellows in the midtones, through to oranges in the highlights, maybe would feel like more of a sunset vibe, right? So we've got our oranges. Let's just test what that's affecting. It's really just those curtains. Yeah, I like the fact that bringing up the luminance makes them pop a bit, and we can probably saturate that a little bit more as well. So if we go done, now if we go back to what we've done, right? We've affected our white balance and a bit of saturation. We've mixed our colors, those individual colors, and then we've applied a grade on top of that. If I hold my finger down, that's what we came from, right? See how blue those whites are on the curtains now, to something like that feels far more stylized, but it also feels like it's got a purpose. Like I deliberately put those colors in because I wanted you to feel that warmth of the scene, okay? If I come back here to light now, let me just finish off by putting my exposure exactly where I want, probably come back to my curves and really kind of dial that contrast in the way that I want it, something like that. When I look at it now, it feels like overall it might be a little yellow. So if I come back here to color and I just back off that white balance just a touch. I don't want to lose the look that I've created, but maybe I just want to pull it back so it's not too globally warm, but those individual colors are still represented. And to me now, that feels like quite an interesting, stylized, but not overcooked image. That's the before, that's the after. That's the before, very neutral, flat raw file. That's the after, which is an image to me that has far more intention to it. Creative development often looks less like a neat straight line and more like a swinging pendulum where we move from one extreme to the other as we overcorrect and we react and we learn. It certainly did for me as I swung from over-processing to under-processing and now hopefully settling somewhere in the middle that feels more like intentional processing. The point isn't to avoid those extremes because in many ways they're necessary. Sometimes we have to explore the edges of something before we even know what the center might look like. And all that's left for us to do is to try work out where we are on that pendulum swing and what that stage has to teach us. Because the goal isn't necessarily realism and it's also not stylization. It's intention. It's trying to work out how we can control the processing in our image to make sure that the photograph at the end of the day says what we want it to say. Because if I've learned anything over the years, style doesn't emerge from trying to have a style. It emerges slowly through 1,000 tiny decisions that we make along the way about how we treat white balance, how we treat the mixing of our colors in the image, and how all those little things affect how the image comes across to the viewer. Because choices repeated again and again gradually become part of how we see. And before you even know it, as time passes, you'll begin to realize that your images are taking on a flavor that's all your own. The journey is messy. It takes time. It has to. But if you stay honest and stay curious and pay attention to your instincts, you'll move from just reacting to actually starting to make intentional choices about your work. And that's where things really start to get interesting, because again, the goal isn't just to make photographs that look realistic or make photographs that look stylish. It's actually to make photographs that feel true to the moment and true to you. Best of luck. Before I go, I just want to remind you that if you're looking for a way to practically support this channel, the best way you can do that is by picking up a copy of my Parable magazine. There are now 7 editions available, each one with writing and photography around a theme, and there will be an 8th edition coming later on this month. Each edition comes in physical format, an A4 size on beautiful uncoated matte paper, or you can pick up a digital version which features a PDF and an MP3 of me reading the magazine to you. I'll leave a link in the description below this video if you want to go along and grab yourself a copy. And lastly, thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. If you're looking for a website or a domain, they are a fantastic option. I've used them myself now as my website of choice for well over a decade. 2 of my favorite things about Squarespace are, on the one hand, how great the websites look, and on the other, how easy they are to use. When I first put my website together, I knew I wanted it to be clean and minimalist, and I found that there are a whole host of templates put together by professional designers to get me started, and then at the back end, it was super easy to be making changes on the fly, to drag in image blocks and text blocks and videos and contact forms and set myself up a store, and it was something that I could do myself just visually without any knowledge of coding or web design. And now I have a website that's easier to manage even on the go just from my laptop when I'm traveling around, but it also looks clean and minimal and tidy and lets my work do the talking. Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and go to squarespace.com/Sean Tucker to get 10% off your first purchase.